good afternoon, everyone. How are you?
Good.
Thanks to Grange Rotary for inviting me to speak. I love to come out and talk about economic development and our business market and what's happening in our community. And so it's a lot to cover in a small amount of time, and I can go any direction that you want to go. So I'm going to just start talking about some things that I think are big picture for Oldham County. And we usually run out of time for questions. So if I'm on a topic that's of interest, interrupt me and just ask, and we can turn this into as much of a discussion as you like to have. I have a map here. This is Google Earth, and I've got the GIS from Planning and Development up here just for references. So if we're talking about a specific area of the county, it might help to zoom in on it and take a look to see what exactly it is we're talking about. So, but with that just in mind, I'm sure that many of you are experiencing a lot of the changes that are happening here in the community, from the traffic that's building up to the new buildings that are under construction and new roads that are under construction everywhere. It's going to be a headache, as growth usually is. But there's a lot of exciting things that have been in planning stages for many years that are really starting to bear fruit now. And it's an exciting thing to, Matt mentioned I've been in our office for a while. I started working when we were just a Chamber of Commerce in 2009. I was part-time. Thank you. I gotta use a microphone. All right, I'm gonna yell. I was part-time at the Economic Development Office, or I'm sorry, the Chamber of Commerce office, and I was selling memberships door to door. Many of you answered my call and joined the chamber. Mark Neiman here. I've got several board members here and community leaders that have kind of remember that time. But in 2010, the chamber merged with Economic Development, with the intention being that in addition to providing the networking services to cultivate the business community here, via the chamber golf scrambles and Oldham County End of the Year dinners and a lot of those types of programs and events that we put on, but also have a private sector driven effort to try to attract and accommodate business into the community. These are big, lofty goals. The two, let's say the two missions really kind of overlap, and they're very, very closely related, but they're also very quite different. So we have a staff. My colleague Sandy Hamilton is here, who's been with us since 2017. I stepped into the role of president in 2016, and since then, we've been excited about the progress and the changes that the chamber office, the organization, and the ultimately our role in the community, the fruit that is starting to bear. Sandy and I work 99% of my time, all of her time is on economic development effort, and that is trying to attract businesses to the community, work with our local employers so that they can expand, grow better jobs, contribute to the infrastructure growth around, and ultimately preserve and even enhance that quality of life we've come to know. Kara Sanders, who's a Rotarian with you here, is our chamber director. She manages all of the programs and events. And we have two part-time people that help her with that role. Mindy Arney, that helps put our communications out, and Dina Freeman, who is our office manager. So we're kind of a little bit of a nice sized staff for a Chamber of Commerce. But because we're not just doing Chamber of Commerce work, it's actually a very important thing. So our funding, about half of it comes from Oldham County Fiscal Court, the local municipality, City of LaGrange, City of Crestwood, and then the rest comes through Top Investment that many of you from your businesses have joined as top investors, or just our general membership dues. So that's kind of an overview of us as an organization. Two things I think that are really critical to understanding the big picture of Oldham County really go back to, obviously we have what was a rural community that has developed over time into a residential community, and now is struggling with the growth of growing a larger business community. And so two regional projects that have kind of been foundational in the ability for that to even happen have been the opening of the East End Bridge in Jefferson County, and then of course the $1.8 billion I-Move project, which is the widening of I-71 from Gene Snyder Expressway up to exit 14. The second phase will go from exit 14 all the way up here to exit 22 in the Grange. And that, as you know, everybody that traverses I-71 knows that's a really critical piece of infrastructure, not just for Oldham County, really for the whole Golden Triangle. 65 south, 3 lanes all the way from Louisville, all the way to Nashville, or all the way down to Tennessee. You've got I-75, you've got I-64, all have adequate lanes. I-71's been an atrophied piece of infrastructure for a long, long time, and we suffer the consequences of that every time we have to get out there, or we see a tragedy on the side of the road. The good news is that project is moving forward, and as you can see, the growth that's happening along that first phase is pretty impressive, and it will definitely be a good welcome addition to the overall getting around the community. But in addition to that, I said I've been here since 2009, and there was a lot of talk that had been going on for a long time about a lot of the roads that are actually under construction now. Everything from the extension of the Commerce Parkway, the widening of 393 and realignment was the first phase of that is completed. Widening of the ramps at exit 22. There's a new interchange that's going to be under construction soon. They've already cleared the trees, which will be a future exit 20, right at the Louis Dampier overpass, which was built in 15. Ernie Harris Parkway that was put in 2018 that goes through Oldham Reserve. Some internal roads that were locally funded by the city and the county for Eden Parkway's extension. East Peak Road that was funded by a land sale related to Trilogy Healthcare we'll talk about here soon. And then of course you got tremendous growth at exit 14 with the Chlor Station project, and now Baptist Hospital has come in and just really offered a transformative moment for the county at both ends of I-71, one with the 54 acres they purchased at exit 14 to create a health and wellness campus that will be anchored by a $300 million state-of-the-art hospital. And of course, bring in 2,000 employees that will help those support the small businesses in that area, help us bring in some new amenities to serve the community, and also give us really high quality jobs. And then north in exit 22, the first response when Baptist made this announcement was, oh my gosh, what's going to happen to our hospital in Grange? It's been an important part of the community for a long time, and other communities up in Henry County and other areas. And so Baptist continued their investment. So an additional 200 jobs will be there for a new pharmaceutical headquarters that they're expanding on their acreage right outside of Oldham Reserve Business Park. And then of course, we have our top employer, the Rawlings Group, who moved out here with 500 employees, who's more than tripled in size. It's about 1,650, trying to get to that 2,000 mark. I mean, those are a tremendous amount of job wins in a really relatively small community. So that widening of I-71 related to those interior roads that branch off of that really have created what will be a nice business district, especially from, say, exit 17 all the way up through 22. Commerce Parkway running parallel to that, of course, had a major announcement earlier this year. The Kroger and Buckner that had been in planning stages for a long, long time finally started moving forward, and they are moving quick on that building. That's 104,000 square foot high-end grocery store. We'll have all the amenities that the kind of the big fancy Krogers have, where you've got the sushi bar and salad bar and some of those different type of amenities. There'll be a 20 pump gas station outside of it. 2 restaurant parcels. One of them I think has already been claimed by McDonald's. So you'll get a lot of those things that people have been asking for. Where's Chick-fil-A going to go? Probably exit 20, maybe exit 18. You just never know. So and the models of all of these types of businesses are changing globally day by day. The grocery business alone, we've seen Kroger actually own the spot that they're on for many, many years. But we're waiting for that second phase of the 393 extension to start moving forward. Well, next thing you know, Hy-Vee and Publix started announcing that they're going to be building, I think Publix is doing 23 units in the Louisville region. So that sparked some, well, let's get our project moving. And so the Buckner Kroger is the first net new Kroger for the Kroger company in 13 years. And so that's right here in Oldham County where all this growth is happening. So really a lot of tremendous opportunities. Everything that you hear about will incent new development in the vicinity of that. So the Kroger, the commercial growth of Commerce Parkway you can expect. The new interchange right on the north side of Oldham Reserve will continue to help make that project move forward. We've got a lot of we have a lot of inquiries related to knowing that it's ready to go now. I mean, one thing I'll touch on regarding the Oldham Reserve, I'll probably just turn it over to questions, was that the intention of the 1,000-acre business park was conceived in the early 2000s. And the reason for that was because as a community to continue to grow healthily and be able to provide money for services, you would have to also grow that tax base. And so as the residential community continued to grow, the need for business became more apparent. But you can't just say that you want business. You have to have a place that accommodates it. And so one of the things that the significant progress that's been made with the Oldham Reserve project was initially it had to be conceived It had to have a group that came and said, we have a vision for what the future of development in Oldham County should be. And then that work had to be started. And the original strategy in developing the property included the initial infrastructure that led right past the front door of the Rawlings Group. The challenge was that they grew so fast that it choked off that access point. And it wasn't until 2015 we even had the Louis Dampier Bridge, or 2018, and we even got Ernie Harris Parkway to go through the property. Once those projects were announced, the city and the county decided to invest in extending Eden Parkway, which had just dead-ended right past our top employer, to move down and connect into Ernie Harris Parkway. As soon as that was decided upon, land became a lot more interesting to people. Trilogy Healthcare purchased 6.7 acres not too long after that, and an option for an additional 3.5 acres to build villas along the municipal golf course. We're getting another 150, or I'm sorry, the Trilogy facility in Oldham Reserve, which is called the Springs at Oldham Reserve. They're anticipating 125 new jobs. And then the villas concept, should they choose to execute that, would be another 30 jobs along the golf course there. So it's a great employer to have in town. Every time you have these new employers come to town, you have more options for our citizens. You have healthcare opportunities for folks to get. And then, of course, the impact that these businesses make, just like you, coming in and investing and serving on boards and donating to our nonprofits and being good corporate citizens are an important part of that impact. So one other thing I'll talk, and I can talk about sports complex if you guys want to do that. One thing I'm trying to get into my talks here is I'm a new resident to LaGrange, and I had lived in Louisville for many years, right outside of Holiday Manor in off Limestone Lane. I'm so excited to be in a place where I can walk to so many different restaurants, right? I've worked here since 2009, and all that is you hear about when you go out and you talk to folks is, man, when are we gonna get some more restaurants? So we've been talking about it. Sandy Hamilton has really helped us move the needle on this. But in addition to have some great Mexican restaurants around and a great entrepreneur in Gustavo, because the joke on the Oldham County Grapevine, which if you're not on it, get on it. It's great. It's good gossip on Facebook. We have Crestwood Bistro, Crestwood Cafe, Wilder Cafe. We have a Thai restaurant in Crestwood. We have 2 sushi restaurants. We have a Mediterranean place called Kebab's Heaven in LaGrange, which you haven't been there. Fantastic food. We have Hometown Pizza just celebrated 40 years and has grown from LaGrange regionally. And I mean, it's great pizza. So we have many others of these types of restaurants, but what I would also press, in addition to 119 West Main, which was featured on the Food Network, Red Pepper, locally owned and operated here with multiple locations, fantastic food. And people talk about Panera and when are we going to get these things that they're just like every other thing that's at every other truck stop along, and go in there and eat them. These businesses are run by families who are teaching their employees how to make change and how to be part of a community, and are living in the place that they're doing business. And so I think that there's a lot of character from the independent business community that are really coming through where a lot of these restaurant owners are. So I would urge you just to consider, if you live in Crestwood, statistically, you're not coming to LaGrange to look for dinner. And if you're in LaGrange, you're not going to Crestwood to look for dinner. So drive around and you'll find some new spots that are open. And so I think that there'll be a lot of great options. Cattleman Steakhouse is another one that came in with Sandy Hamilton there. So I'll stop there. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Any questions?
Where the new Kroger store is, in 146 railroad tracks, are they ever going to go under that? Is that on the,
it's really one of the most crucial pieces of infrastructure that has been long overdue. And we are told that it is moving forward any day now. But the truth of that is, I think it was in late September, we had a meeting, Speaker Osborne had called, that had KYTC, it had local planning and development office, it had LG&E, CSX, all there. And the message was, what in the heck is taking so long here? We have developments waiting on that important piece of infrastructure to go through. And the answer was, well, it's not we don't have it. That's not our issue. And then it came down to, there was a set of plans that needed a variance from CSX because the plans were made years past, the regulations changed at CSX. So they needed to approve those with according to their old rules and they were sitting on somebody's desk. That got done. Next thing you know, that massive project, you have to remobilize LG&E, AT&T, and all these other folks. And so there's a lot of that going on. Realistically, I don't know. There are people out there putting new railroad ties underneath it right now. But I don't think that that's related to maneuvering the railroad tracks temporarily. I'm sorry?
There are porta potties, 2 porta potties sitting on top of it right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of general maintenance that they'll do. So hopefully, we've seen LG&E over there many times over on the Clayton and Lambert property, and it's we're thinking, oh, this is good. They're getting started, and then they're not getting started. So we definitely have to get that. Another very crucial one is Allen Lane extension. So just like at Highway 393, you have that. You can see how much difference it makes to widen it, and then once you go into those tracks, it's going to be a much better intersection there. Well, just north of that at Allen Lane, you have the same type of project that is also designed, supposedly funded, and we're waiting for it to get moving. And when you consider Allen Lane, where it hits 146, where it will pass over I-71 at a new interchange, which would be exit 20, and go around Ernie Harris Parkway that will connect into Highway 53. You have an entire bypass now that LaGrange has that will take all of that pressure off of exit 20 and really spread things out fairly nicely. Another important piece to roads that I think are worth noting. I watch very often on Facebook our elected officials take a beating over, the traffic that's caused or why did they do this here and whatnot. And it certainly is understandable because it can be very inconvenient. But the Highway 53 at the southbound ramps of I-71 were just widened, and then it created a better turning lane situation at East Crystal Drive. It was a mess for months, and every day everybody was, "Oh, this is a disaster. Why did you all plan it this way?" There is no control locally for our folks to manage how that is going to get done or what it's coinciding with that the state might also be doing in the area. But the truth is now, and they had closed it down to 1 lane. Now it's open and it's awesome. And nobody's complaining about any of it because it is a much easier and safer way to get through. So there's going to be a lot of that happens. And it's going to need to happen in order for us to be able to accommodate folks to come in and say, yes, you can move your business there. There are utilities that are accessible and your people can get in and out without problems. Sure.
David, I heard you said you're going to continue the construction from the LaGrange exit on up I-71.
Yes.
From where?
Oh, from 14 up to exit 22. Now, what they'll do from exit 22 up, I'm not sure.
Okay, that's what I was.
Sure.
I thought I heard you say they were going to take it.
Yeah. No, it will go all the way to exit 22. That's why we have to keep the foot on the gas there.
Okay.
This is another interesting piece of Oldham County. When you kind of if you think of a string from downtown Louisville and come up I-71 and then take that string and go down I-64, you're going to get at Simpsonville about the same distance as LaGrange. And then just continue on I-64 to see what else there is, right? From Wanty-Peytona to Frankfurt to all the way to Lexington. I mean, these arteries that have been addressed, they also have significant populations along them that help bring some of the projects that go those ways. When you look at the I-71 corridor, you hit LaGrange and then you kind of fall off the face of the earth for a little while. No offense to our friends up in Henry County or up in Carroll County, but it is a challenge. And you do have where JCTC went in Carroll County, Nucor, North American Stainless, and a lot of really heavy industrial that's up there that has created some growth. But when you look at around the towns and whatnot, the impact
But they won't start that next phase until they're completely finished with the first one, right?
That's what I understand, yes. But I was told it's all funded, it's all designed and all ready to go.
Yeah.
Like.
You mentioned the 200 jobs that were going to be coming in association or behind the Baptist Hospital. I'm assuming you're familiar with the plans of that expansion. The first plans that I saw were actually calling for, and that's also a loading dock back there, that they were going to bring the semis off of exit 22, have them come down 53, and then basically along the outer edge of the Cherrywood neighborhood and come back around that way. Are you familiar with those plans? Because for a lot of us, that makes no sense when you've got exit 20 about to be built, that they wouldn't bring it off of New Moody.
Right. I think they'll probably figure some of those other routes out as the interchanges go in. You also have some other internal roads that may be built, maybe in the meantime, that will give better access than just if they were to get off at exit 20, come down to Eden Parkway and come up, there's a western leg of Peak Road, West Peak Road, that is a big part of the overall development. Not to mention additional internal roads that have to be built. So it's going to be a mess up there. 53 is probably going to need to be widened. There's been a plan to widen 53 for I think 25 years. But that'd definitely be something worth addressing. Also, it's a good point to look at all of the land that is developable here to bring in jobs, whether it's privately owned, whether it's a project of the city of LaGrange and the county, whether it's opportunities that are obvious to a lot of folks. It is in competition with other pieces of property in other markets. And so when we look at what is the potential that we have here related to the potential that they have somewhere else, we have to look at what our product is. And when you hear there's a lot of economic development success in the state of Kentucky right now, largely related to industrial growth. And Oldham County has not been really laid out for a lot of industrial growth. Now there's possibilities in the future that we could decide to do, but when you look at an Oldham Reserve, you've got an office complex that is also has half of that project is a residential piece. It's a live, work, and play campus. My friend Fran Scott here has reminded us, and I just caught myself doing it again, Fran. It's a lifestyle campus. The amenities are a big part of the attraction of it. So you don't just build subdivisions. You have a neighborhood that is attached to the amenities that also has those employers in there. And that was a very forward-thinking project when it was presented here. What the Chlor Station project is in practicality is very similar. Now that you have Baptist coming in and building multiple buildings, including a hospital, you have a live, work, and play possibility and environment there. Downtown LaGrange is already that, right? I mean, it is you can live, I live, work, and play in downtown LaGrange. My office is around the corner. You have restaurants and amenities that are right there. And so you don't just live in your house, you live in the area. And so those opportunities are great. But back to my point is, as you try to attract employers, what is the market for those employers? What is the status of office in the world right now? What is the status of office parks 22 miles away from a city, an urban area? So when you look at what Mr. Rawlings has achieved and what Baptist is now investing, I mean, Baptist will, when it's all said and done, it'll be close to $500 million in Oldham County. Those are tremendous opportunities, and that will have a big economic impact that it will affect the county. But most importantly, it really proves the model that was envisioned a long time ago. This is a place where we have the highest educated, healthiest, and wealthiest people in the entire state of Kentucky. And we need to have jobs that those folks are going to work so that they're not driving down I-71 to work in Louisville and take their commerce somewhere else. So, yes.
Somewhat related to that, I think it's reasonable to expect that our population is going to grow fast, faster as it has in the past. And when I first moved here, I read the report. I think it's the farm report. This is back in like 2007, and it was indicating that the taxes for individuals, like you bring more people into the area, each person costs more than $1 to support.
Sure.
Being here, where businesses might contribute 70-80% of the dollar back to the area.
Right.
So essentially, bringing more people in creates a deficit.
Right.
So when the development happens, is new development done in balance with potential for businesses, or is that all kind of handled separately?
I'd like to say yes. It's not. It happens as you get users who are willing to locate in an area that's not ready to accommodate their presence. That's the answer. And so I think the best work that we can do as a community right now is the work that was started earlier, which is we got to stay on top of getting roads everywhere. In addition to that, the worst part of it isn't the roads. It's not the water, it's sewer. You've got to have utilities. Exit 17 has been sitting there as an opportunity for a long time. A public investment of utilities to get it there would result in an employer coming here. But that's hard for our elected officials to make that case that we're going to spend money to improve somebody's private property here, so that in the off chance that we can get a business that people might decide that they like. And so you end up with these kind of spinning your wheels types of scenarios. It's very common in lots of communities. What we have that is advantageous here is we have a very active community conversation. We have elected officials who are all engaged and on board. I mean, it's cliche to say that, but it really is the truth. And in fact, Matt has asked me regularly about what kind of things do we need to do to prepare for the future. And One of the things that I know I've benefited from is having the skill sets of a lot of folks in this room, people on our board of directors and whatnot. There's a lot of institutional history and knowledge here that the next leaders need to be able to have. And I don't know where those next leaders are, to be able to serve on the boards, to be willing to run for office. But we're 4 years away from probably having an entirely new fiscal court. And so the folks that will fill those seats and on the city councils and in fiscal court, what do they know about this business, right? Because I'll tell you this, as somebody who's been in the economic development office for a while, every single election, one of the top topics is economic development. Not one of those candidates comes in and asks us for a briefing on anything. The elected officials are aware because we meet with them regularly related to all those types of things. So it is important to have people getting educated about what is the way this can be done that is best for the county, because they're going to continue to move out here. So what are we going to do to accommodate that? And Oldham Reserve is a great example of an investment that is producing over $1 billion a year in compensation revenue. And so you have this project that's sitting here that is growing the tax base, but it's also impacting the tax base. And so those things are going to continue to be something we'll have to struggle with.
So added to your challenge is that when it comes to housing decisions, that's done by the cities.
Well, I mean, that's complicated as well. So we don't have a property tax. We have an insurance premium tax. There's a compensation tax just in the city of LaGrange. But the property tax, the county only receives about 8% of that. A lot of that tax that the school system gets, that has to go back out into the state in a lot of ways. I mean, it's amazing how that works. So the tax base growth is going to come off of, for the county, about 8% of property tax and an insurance premium tax that will vary in some spots. Well, those are things that are going to provide challenges to continue to promote the services that go on in the county. And it's not an easy answer to get there. I mean, you get to where you have to raise taxes. But business growth certainly impacts that. It slows it, it staves it. If we have the types of businesses come in that aren't producing more kids in schools, that's good. But ultimately, when I got to speak on a panel in Indianapolis for it was a regional partnership of economic development in the city of Indianapolis. And so they had some mayors from municipalities outside of downtown Indianapolis. And these were all, it's a lot denser there. So, but all of these mayors are saying, we've got to have more housing. We've got to have more housing. Our employers are going to leave if they don't have housing. And so we're in a place where we're trying to make sure that the housing doesn't create such a negative impact here that we're hurting our schools and hurting our pocketbooks. But also employers want to have housing. 200 new folks, they're going to be working at Baptist and LaGrange. Where are they going to live? Where are the 2,000 folks who are going to live in, who are going to work in Crestwood? Rawlings Group was 1,600 people. I mean, that's bigger than Brown Forman and Young's corporate offices combined, right? It's a higher average salary, and it's right here in LaGrange, a town of 9,000 some odd people. So, where these folks live.
Hey, what are we doing when those businesses come in? They're going to need general laborers and workers, but yet they can't afford to live here. And you hear from the hospitals, and my wife works at one, so many of her staff come in and on the bus route. Yeah. And so, for every high-end job, you got one or two below them working, but can't afford to either be in the community or get here.
Yeah.
What's being done to help with affordable housing, transportation, to find the general laborer that, because these jobs are 50, 60,000, and we still have people that need $20,000, $30,000 jobs to get some of them going.
You're right.
And we don't have them in Oldham County.
It's incredibly complicated. You have a lot of folks who are going to move up into Henry County and Carroll County. We have 2 people in our office that drive from Carroll County to work part-time in our office. And, also I was meeting with President Handy at JCTC yesterday, or Monday we did? Yesterday was Monday. And we were talking about pharmaceutical techs. Where are we going to get those for Baptist? What about nursing? What about, we talked about the Arvin Center having opportunities here. And they said, we can't even get people to enroll in some of these programs. And so finding just even the employee, it's way beyond when we're talking about a pipeline of talent that is just not even there. So what are we going to do to get kids interested in those types of things, to want to pursue those jobs? And so, this is a great example of what this place of what other communities really hope to have. Because every time we brought a leadership Oldham County class through the Sarban Center, every single one of us has been like, I wish they had this when I was a kid. Because it's exciting, it's engaging, and it's focused on the jobs of tomorrow. But also, our school system is willing to help curtail some of that curriculum to what our employers need. And they've done that up the road in Carroll County as well with JCTC and some of the advanced manufacturers up there. But when we started talking about pharmacy techs, they were saying we can offer it, but we don't know that we'll get anybody to sign up. So I don't know the answer to that. Back to the affordable housing piece. I mean, good luck. I don't. Who's going to tolerate it going anywhere around where they're going to live? Right. I mean, and I meet a whole lot of very nice people who just depends on the topic, whether this is the best place ever, this is the worst place on earth, right? As soon as I don't want a vinyl village next to my house, or I don't want apartments or any of those types of things. And you think, cost of living is going up so exponentially. You wonder if it's even tenable, where you've got apartments on the regular in Jefferson County, not even out here where you get this benefit of the schools, are averaging between $1,200 and $1,800 a month. I mean, it's incredible. How could young people move back to Oldham County? And so it's a real challenge. I think, though, you have to think regionally. People will locate regionally. They'll get to where they eventually work their way into Oldham County where they can afford to do it. But as far as policies that are going to be related to that, I don't know what's going to change. Other questions?
What about the sports complex you were touching on?
Sure. Okay. We have, as an office, received a lot of inquiries about people who think that there should be some effort towards getting a sports complex in Oldham County. I think it's a great idea. I think that this community has a lot of parents who are engaged with their kids, who utilize sports, and that we have a market for it. But really, what are you talking about when you talk about a sports complex? Are we talking about a place that is for our kids? Are we talking about a place that is a tourism attraction, some mixture of both? Is this Parks and Rec or is this tourism? What goes on there? Also, what is the expense of something like that? So we've had fiscal court members, city councils of all the city councils approaches, board members, community people just call and say, man, I'd like to have an auditorium. Man, I'm always traveling for soccer. I'd like to do a soccer complex. And in fact, Louisville City Soccer has taken over the Oldham County Youth Soccer Association, which has about 1,500 kids in it. And in 2020, we met with them. They were interested in building a practice facility out here. They have several of those in their business model, and they just haven't been able to execute that yet. So it's kind of neat that that's a potential there. There's some talk about the John Black Community Center, what's going to happen to the pool. There's parents of swimmers that call, we need an auditorium. Well, maybe there's some way we could put something together. But ultimately, the way these projects work is there's a large capital investment that happens at the governmental level. And I think that the appetite for that probably isn't there right now, considering the other priorities that there are in the community. However, fiscal court asked us to pursue an effort to look into what's the feasibility of a sports complex. And so Sandy has spent a lot of hours working with that. Hannah Hall, who volunteered some time in the office, did as well. And recently issued some RFQs to get from, these are management companies who not only manage the facilities, but they help plan out those facilities. So E-Town's baseball complex, Grand Park, all the big parks that are in the US. There were about 6, I think, that responded to the RFQs. We're narrowing those down. Ultimately, they're going to come back and say it's going to be $50,000. That's about average what we're hearing. To do a feasibility study where they look at the entire market and they say, Oldham County is really laid out for great lacrosse, and you guys can be the lacrosse kings and queens of America. And here's what we think lacrosse facilities would cost. Here's how they would be managed. Here's the ongoing expenses of it, and they kind of give you a sense of what it is you're dealing with there. So what I anticipate is I don't know if they're going to fund the study or not. We have done our part where we can't say anything else about. We can say what we like, and there was is Mike DeGiro in here? Is he part of this program? Okay, well, so Mike DeGiro had written an editorial in the Oldham era. It was really critical of the magistrates wanting to fund the study, saying that they get paid enough, they should be able to do the study themselves. And I just thought, well, which is it? Are they incompetent or are they completely competent where they can do something like that? It is, we need people who are in the business of the thing that we're trying to do to help us understand how that would be planned. And then we need to hire people who do that thing to work it. Not have some armchair effort where, well, I like soccer and I want a soccer field here. And we decide to commit the community to some kind of large capital investment for soccer fields that may or may not be successful. And so I think that is the best route for the community to pursue. And so that's what we have recommended to fiscal court. They'll decide whether or not they're actually going to spend money in the feasibility study. If it comes back, it may say that here's some smaller things that you guys can capitalize on that we'd be very interested in pursuing. Or it might say this is a very expensive endeavor and here's what we would recommend for you. And it might go up on a shelf, but that could come off a shelf at some point. So ultimately it's going to be expensive. Yes.
Have there been several locations picked out for where this might go?
There's always opinions about where we go, but I am of the belief that we should not recommend any location. We should ask this out of town kind of third party to say, where do you think this works best based on the parameters that work for other sports complexes? Now, there's obvious spots that are owned by the county already. Oldham Reserve is one of those. You know, is that something that could go in Oldham Reserve? Well, I think it could. It would depend. It would change kind of the plan for Oldham Reserve. There's land available to be purchased. I don't think that would be something that would also be pursued. But you also have the state reformatory's got about 2,300 acres and 100 acres behind OC High School where they're currently using the soccer fields there. That's also owned by the reformatory. It's leased by the county and then subleased to Little City for what they're doing. So, there's spots out there where it could happen, but I would love them to come in and say, you guys have a geographical advantage to be here, having something right off the interchange, right here, 50 acres, this type of, lighting is going to be an issue. We had a go-kart track that was talking to us a couple of months back, and it was like, where could we put our go-kart track, which everybody would love to get on go-karts, but the people who would be living where that go-kart track is going to be next to would be losing their minds. So yeah, it's kind of tough.
Next to shooting range.
Other questions?
Just maybe this is more of a comment than a question, but at the next city council meeting, if you're not aware, they did a first reading in November. They're going to do the second reading in December and likely vote on extending the occupational tax. The occupational tax was designed to pay off the Oldham Reserve bond. That will technically be paid off towards the end of next year. City council is going to vote to likely extend the occupational tax indefinitely. It will not sunset and be able to be used for, and that's a good question, what it'll be used for, what other projects or the things that might need to be used for Oldham Reserve. But if you hadn't heard that vote's going to be happening December 5th.
And they're raising it too, aren't they?
No, it's still 1%.
It is, it's important to have some source of revenue to continue to make investments to make things more developable. In Louisville is 2.23%. If you work in J-Town, you're going to stack up to another 3% on top of that. So it is, nobody wants to pay taxes. I don't vote for taxes on myself usually. So this is one of those things where you look at it and say, this is an important part of the investment that was made to try to grow business. And so if those things are not going to be available, what's going to be the opportunity to fix the roads, do those types of things? So it's tough conversation. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Sorry.